I'm Alex, and I'm a magician, and a creator and author of the Event Horizon Toolkit. This video is going to be a little bit different from the other ones that you've seen, because this is basically me, unrehearsed, unscripted, trying to tell you why this stuff is important, and more particularly, why it's important to me. Because I can only speak from my experience, and in my experience, magic has effectively acted as a lifesaver for myself. For about 15 years or so now, that at least that I know, I've had bouts of depression and sort of streams of social anxiety and moments where my mental health has been incredibly challenging and difficult to deal with and difficult to sort of try and survive. Basically, my image of myself has always been negative. I've never really liked who I was or who I would be, the kind of person that I acted like, and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of hate there for myself and my actions in the past, and a lot of that was from this sort of nagging voice in the back of my head that says you're not good enough. And all this sort of came to fruition about 4 or 5 years ago. About 5 years ago, I learned my grandma had cancer, and the next sort of 6 months was incredibly difficult for me and my family, and particularly my granddad, and obviously for her as well. And we saw her basically shrink until she passed away. And then somehow it got more difficult, because in the following 12 months from that, my granddad basically shrunk away as well. And he was one of the most generous, funny, incredible men that I think I will ever meet. But after my grandma died, his personality changed, and his reliance on other people changed, and he started developing all sorts of different issues and mental health challenges, all of his own. And effectively, he had to go into full-time care, and it was just this completely heartbreaking, tragic thing to see this man who used to be a sort of shining example of humour and warmth and love become a sort of hollow echo of what he used to be. And then eventually, after, as I say, about a year or so of living without my grandma, he too passed away. And that was very difficult. I was lucky to have them for as long as I did, into my sort of mid-20s, which I know a lot of people aren't that lucky, but it was a big shock to me and a big shock to everyone else, because we sort of lost about all but one grandparent and sort of this extended family of ours in the space of about 12 months. I tell you this because all of this sort of brought to fore my own mental health, my own challenges with who I thought I was, my perception of myself, and my idea of what it meant to be a person, what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be part of a family, part of a unit, part of something that I always identified myself with, but I was never quite sure where I fit in, being sort of the youngest, or one of the youngest in the whole thing. So it was a really difficult time, obviously. There's no easy way of saying it. The depression and the anxiety and the reliance that I had on food and eating, which I still have, big man, peaked and was massive, and for the sort of 3 or 4 months, all I can really describe for the 3 or 4 months after my granddad passing away was all I can sort of describe is being in this state of shock and effectively traumatic grief. Months and months and months I had nightmares of what happened with my grandma, what happened with my granddad coming back and effectively haunting me in a very literal sense, and compounding all these negative thoughts and compounding all these negative ideas and compounding all that perception and self-doubt and self-hatred and all that sort of stuff until a point where about maybe 6 months or so after he died, maybe not that long. It's difficult to tell because, time being what it is. A couple of months at least, maybe 6 months, half a year, I was drunk, and I purposely got myself drunk because that was a way of dealing with stuff. I was drunk and I was wandering home from the pub, and I walked up to the top of the car park, not really knowing why, but just having all these thoughts and all these ideas and all these things rammed inside my head, and I just couldn't stop. I hadn't got any sleep because I was terrified of dreaming again. And in this sort of fugue state, I found myself at the top of a car park, looking down, looking over the edge, and thinking, just for a minute, just a brief flash, that maybe I should jump. Maybe just it could all be over. All this grief, all this pain, all this issue, all the guilt, all these feelings could just vanish. Would just be over. Now, obviously I didn't do anything, and I stepped back, and then that was almost enough to shock me out of the shock and to say, what the bloody hell are you doing, Alex? But that was a low point. That was a low point at the end of a lot of low points. And again, I'm not telling you this because it's a sob story, but I'm telling you this because I know what it's like to be at a low point. I know what it's like to think your head isn't right, that your body isn't right, that your view of the world isn't right, that you will never find solace and you'll never find peace and you'll never find a way out of this constant stream of negativity. Luckily, or divine luckily, or whatever you want to call it, about 6 months or so later than that, my nephew came along, my first nephew came along, and then a couple of years after that, my second nephew came along, and they sort of act as an anchor for me. Along with that, probably not coincidentally, at that time I found that I could actually use a lot of these ideas from magic to channel these feelings, to channel these experiences, to channel the ideas that I had in my head that couldn't find another way of getting out there. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going around doing magic tricks and talking about this anxiety or talking about this depression. In fact, this is the first time I've really opened up more than anything else to anyone, and that's weird, putting that out on the internet and putting it to you, people who possibly never even met me, but hey, this is my life. But this is what I do. I'm a communicator, and if you're a kind of person who talks to people or sells to people or writes things or talks to people on the other end of a phone or tries to tell people about the benefits that you do or coaches people or any of that sort of stuff, you're a communicator as well. And I'm not necessarily saying that you have the same life experiences of me, and you possibly have had even more tragic and even more traumatic experiences than I have had. Again, as I say, I'm very lucky that I've only ever had a limited amount of it, and you know, it happened at a very short period, whereas people live for decades with these sorts of things. I'm very, very aware of that. But I know that magic and guiding myself more towards magic and the principles and the psychological understanding of magic, along with all the theatrical side of that, all the acting, all the comedy, all the writing, all the character creation, all the drama therapy, all of that sort of stuff, I know that for me, that saved me. That worked as a counterpoint to that night on the car park that I will never forget. All the stuff that I've done, all the stuff that you see on this channel, all the stuff that I've done with Mind Sways, all the stuff that I've done with AG Magicians, has all worked as a counterpoint to weighing up that moment that I was standing there thinking I could just jump, I could just end it. But actually, all this stuff is there. All this brilliant new stuff that I can talk and I can make people laugh with, and I can share moments with my nephews, and I can share moments with the family members who are still living. All that stuff is on the other end of that really, really low point. So that's sort of one reason, and there's dozens of other reasons why these things are important, but for me, that's sort of my story, and I hope it's sort of illuminated some aspects for you, and I hope you I hope if this has resonated with you and you have felt yourself in this situation, or you feel yourself in this situation, there are links below here and in the YouTube thing for stuff you can look at, stuff you can help yourself with, and stuff that you can find where there are groups and there are other people that you can talk to, and all this sort of stuff. Don't do what I'm doing, which is just talking to strangers on the internet, although if you feel comfortable with that, feel free. Do whatever makes you feel better. But I hope this has pointed you in a direction that you can see, well, this stuff isn't just sort of flashy, silly sleight of hand movements, or it's not just sort of the sooty and sweet Punch and Judy pantomime magic. For me, this stuff genuinely really changed my life and saved my life, and I hope for you, you can let a little bit of magic into your life as well.